So is it okay with you all if I just open with the poems I was going to read otherwise? Okay, great, thanks. Is that okay? Do you guys have time? Okay, just a few moments. All right, but everybody, this is Carrie Fountain, one of the greatest poets in the world, and my dear friend, and I'm so honored she's here with me today, and I'm so thankful to Dahlia and Marianne for hosting this event. And I'm sorry to hold everything up for an 8-year-old, but I just feel like he's really important to have him in here. So I'll just read 3 poems that kind of connect to my little remarks. I wanted to make a toast after they make their kind toast. Here's a poem, an older poem that I first read in Austin, I remember. Ted Kooser is my president. When I travel abroad, I will invoke Ted's poems at checkpoints. Yes, Barnes. Yes, memory, gentility, the quiet little wind among stones. If they ask, "You are American?" I will say, "Ted's kind of American." No, I carry no scissors or matches. Yes, horizons, dinner tables. Yes, weather, the honesty of it. Buttons, chickens, feel free to dump my purse. I'll wander to the window, stare out for days. Actually, I have never been to Nebraska, except with Ted, who hosted me dozens of times, though we have never met. His deep assurance comforts me. He's not big on torture at all. He could probably sneak into your country when you weren't looking and say something really good about it. Have you noticed those purple blossoms in a clump beside your wall? After that poem, I did meet Ted. I got invited to the University of Nebraska to be visiting writer for 2 weeks in Lincoln. It was an incredible experience, and that was definitely a case of a poem making a few things happen. Like Ted seeking me out after that, like, well, I'd like to meet you too. And so this is called Before I Was a Gazan. I was a boy, and my homework was missing. Paper with numbers on it, stacked and lined. I was looking for my piece of paper, proud of this plus that, then multiplied, not remembering if I had left it on the table after showing to my uncle, or the shelf after combing my hair. But it was still somewhere, and I was going to find it, turn it in, make my teacher happy, make her say my name to the whole class before everything got subtracted in a minute. Even my uncle, even my teacher, even the best math student and his baby sister who couldn't talk yet. And now I would do anything for a problem I could solve. And thank you. Hi, welcome. And dedicated, of course, to all the children in the world who have to live through the decisions and actions that adults make and have no power over it. And as Texans, I know we care about children. So this is a universal topic. So thank you all for, so I'll save the other poem. I can save the other poem till later because my special guests are here. Thank you, and we're gonna start now, special guests. And there he is. And Connor, these are my friends, Marianne, Dahlia, Carrie, you know Carrie, yeah.
Okay, so now the moment we've been waiting for. My name is Marianne De Leon. I'm the CEO of the Texas Book Festival. It is so wonderful to see all of you. To my right is my co-leader, our Chief Operations Officer, Dahlia Azim, the wonderful Dahlia Azim. And we are so excited to present the Texas Writer Award to Naomi Shihab Nye. Naomi is being honored for very good reason. Described by the New York Times as a voice of great empathy and calm, and by Kirkus Reviews as a writer who reaches for hope with hands firmly rooted in experience, Naomi has an exceptional gift for seeing the beauty in everyday life and connecting us through the power of language. Born to a Palestinian father and American mother, Naomi grew up between the United States and the Middle East, a journey of discovery and connection that informs much of her writing. Her body of work spans poetry, fiction, essays, and children's literature, creating worlds filled with characters and stories that reflect the simplicity and complexity, the joys and sorrows of our shared experiences.
As Naomi has said of her poetry, I have always loved the gaps, the spaces between things, as much as the things. I love staring, pondering, mulling, puttering. I love the times when someone or something is late. There's that rich possibility of noticing more in the meantime. Poetry calls us to pause. There is so much we overlook, while the abundance around us continues to shimmer on its own. And Naomi's work, thankfully, has not been overlooked. Among her honors, she has received the National Book Critics Circle Lifetime Achievement Award, the Texas Institute of Letters Lifetime Achievement Award, and she has been a finalist for the National Book Award. She served as the Poetry Foundation's Young People's Poet Laureate from 2019 to 2022, and she is the Chancellor Emeritus of the Academy of American Poets.
Naomi's impact extends far beyond her literary achievements. She has devoted her life to giving back. From her advocacy with PEN America and UNICEF to her mentorship of young writers and workshops around the world. Here in Texas, she has partnered with local schools, community centers, of course, universities, and organizations like the Texas Book Festival. Today, we honor Naomi Shihab Nye as a true literary ambassador, someone who bridges divides, promotes empathy, and reminds us of our shared humanity.
Switch places. The award we're giving Naomi is unique. It's a pair of boots. They're not your typical boots, but custom handmade boots by artisanal boot makers Rocket Buster out of El Paso, Texas.
Oh, they're so cute.
As soon as we invited Naomi to accept this award, she got to work on designing her dream boots with Rocket Buster, a tradition that we love to facilitate here at Texas Book Festival. She began by tracing her feet, and I think her toes, I learned this morning, and sharing that drawing with Rocket Buster, so we hope that these boots fit like Cinderella's slippers. Please join us in congratulating Naomi Shihab Nye.
They are so beautiful. Ooh, they're so pretty. And I love that they say Texas Book Festival on them. Oh, thank you both so much. Thank you all. Thank you.
This is
So beautiful.
It's so awesome.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I'm really
We'll
grateful.
pack it up for you, huh?
Okay, pack them up. Thank
Pack 'em
you.
up. Right?
Bye. It was the first time I had ever talked to. Right now? No, that's too embarrassing. No, I'll do that in a minute. That has to be a little private. No. Yeah. Something has to be private in this. No. I love that. Thank you so much. I'm very, very grateful. I had never talked to professional boot makers on the phone before. It was a whole different kind of conversation than I'm used to. And they really tried to talk me into taller boots. Apparently they think that shorter boots are not real boots in some way, but it was, a process of convincing. Thank you all for taking time out of your Saturday morning to come to this event here. I'm so grateful, Dahlia and Marianne, for all those generous words you said. And so grateful to all of you. So many of you here feel like family and our family. A toast to my dearest husband, Michael Nye, who grew up first in Corpus Christi, Texas. And to our grandson, Connor James Nye. Would you stand up and wave? Here he is. Stand up and wave. Just wave. Thank you. Yay, Connor. And Connor said he would like to share a few words with us today at the end, which, how could I say no? That's been my whole life, is encouraging the voices of children. So I said yes. So I don't know what he's going to say, but we can't wait. And his brother, Marky. Mark, we love having you here. Thank you. And their Mama Kelly and Grandma Carol, Cece. We're so glad to have you all here. And all the dear writers in the room. So many of my favorite writers are in here. Some people I was going to toast specifically. But Marian Winnick and I are doing a presentation tomorrow. She flew down from Baltimore for the Texas Book Festival. She lived in Austin 20 years. Two of my neighbors who were also doing presentations, Jenny Brown and Monica Mackley, both here. My dear hero who spoke so gorgeously last night, Brett Anthony Johnston, director of the Michener Center for Writers, one of our guides, and so many others of you as well. Thank you for being in here. So I just asked Carrie's permission to do a quick toast. Writers have always been our real leaders, right? Writers. I really wanted to say that in this building. Writers and readers make the stories, make the codes of behavior, make the world we often wish we could live in. So this is a toast to all the Texas writers, all of you I've named and others, everyone here at the whole book festival who have guided us all through so many days. We need you more than ever now to tell the stories, widen the horizons. This is a toast to children and teenagers, the idealists of the world. They are believers in fairness and justice. What happens to us? I think about this every day because they are the people I've worked with for half a century. It's the best thing about getting older is you can say these dramatic time segments. I have worked for half a century with children and teenagers. Thanks originally to the Texas Commission on the Arts. Anina Moore, where are you, Anina? There's Anina. Texas Commission on the Arts, thank you for being here. They originally sent so many Texas writers and artists into schools, many rural communities, to work with children. I still do that kind of work all these years later, and I will always thank you for the model that you gave. And in those days, and for like 20 years that followed, Texas was one of the premier 50 states that sent the most artists into schools, thanks to the Texas Commission right around the block. Thanks to all the schools and teachers who welcomed us. And it was incredible that it was as comfortable and easy and beautiful and needed to talk about poetry in Albany, Texas, or Longview or Comstock as it was in Austin or San Antonio or Dallas. I wanted to say a toast to the Holdsworth Center here in Austin, founded by Charles Butt in memory of his teacher mother, because it's devoted to Texas education. And I just think it is a truly magical place, and it's modeling the improvement of Texas schools through administrators. To the Michener Center, my place of employment over more than 25 years, I commuted up here, and to Texas State University, two of my home places in Texas, and to all the students here in Austin, in San Antonio, all around the state and country, Arab, Jewish, and everyone else who had the decency and courage to stand up for a ceasefire, for peace, for better days, for human beings together, even when threatened with, I know some of your students and some of mine were threatened with arrest. They still thought it was important enough to advocate for others, to be activists. And I think as writers, one of the things we're always trying to do is make a better world. So anyone who thinks that wholesale slaughter is a good answer to a problem is probably on the wrong track. And students have been much braver than politicians in this regard. So it's important for all the rest of us, readers, writers, teachers, educators, to stand up for them because they're just trying to welcome one another and they're still the idealists. I just wish I could play to everybody some of the WhatsApp voice messages in my phone from a champion of literacy in the Gaza Strip. Yid al-Hissi is her name. I was doing the first Zooms I ever did in my life before COVID. They weren't even called Zooms then. I can't remember what they were called. Were with Yid's students because she has been promoting reading, writing, English-speaking literacy, helping each other through the word for so many years. But she has been calling me regularly, crying, singing, praying in the phone, so worried about her own family. She is in a family completely of women, and she is trying to protect them all. And all of her students, especially worried about her students. And also a big toast to my parents, gone but ever with me, Aziz Shihab, who was a journalist for the San Antonio Express-News and the Dallas Morning News, and my mother, Miriam Shihab. I'll be presenting a book connected to her with Jenny Brown in the Poetry Tent this afternoon, who was an educator herself. They made a very random and seemingly reckless decision to move to Texas as they were fleeing a war zone in Jerusalem after the Six-Day War. And I'm so glad they came here. So thank you, Texas. I appreciate you all. That's the end of my post. I will try to be worthy of these boots in days to come. So I would like to say that years ago when I made a Texas anthology, Carrie Fountain, who is a quintessential New Mexican as well as Austinite, is the title poet of this book. Is this forever or what? And I was thinking about, it comes from from her poem in the book, but I was thinking about what people always ask when they drive across Texas. Or these days, even I-35, you could ask that question. Even between San Antonio and Austin, you could ask that one question. Thank you, Carrie. And Carrie and her husband, Kirk Lynn, have been like Austin family. Let me stay at their house 100 times, maybe 1,000. Thank you.
I'm speechless. But that's okay. Naomi, I loved what you said. And I was thinking as you were speaking about the students that you have touched over the years and all of the writers that you've brought along. I know Jenny and I have similar stories of coming to poetry through Naomi, the poet Jenny Brown. And even a couple of weeks ago at our event at First Light, Miriam and I were talking in the corner and I said something, oh, Naomi changed my life. And she said, I wouldn't have a career without Naomi,
And we met a couple of blocks from here in Austin. Yeah.
Yes. So I wondered if you could speak a little bit about your teachers and how you came to poetry, how you came to reading, how you came to writing, and the teachers that you had along the way who brought you.
I'd love to. Just quickly, I'll talk about two. My second grade teacher in Missouri, in Ferguson, Missouri, Harriet Lane, was the oldest teacher in the St. Louis Public School District at the time I had her. And every year there was a story about her in the newspaper. And she was a very strong advocate of poetry in an old-fashioned kind of way, like memorization and hand copying of other people's poems and hand making of books and creating our own poems. We were 7. We had to stand up in front of one another and recite. And this turned out to be just a great encourager that I would carry all my years, that poetry was at the heart of human experience. She used to say, you're all going to need poems in your lives. And if you memorize poems, those lines that you need will pop into your mind when you need them. And she told us, by the time you leave second grade, you will never mumble again. Because she was very big on elocution in a kind of old-fashioned way. And so Harriet Lane was my most important poetry teacher. And she also was present when my first poems were being published in children's magazines. And I was reading them into the school intercom, which had just been installed. And my friends were telling me that if my lips touched the microphone, I would be electrocuted. So I was a little scared of the intercom, but I would go to the office whenever a poem was published and read it. And the principal would always say, "And did Mrs. Lane inspire you?" Harriet Lane. And I would say, "Oh yes, she inspires us all." So that memory has always stayed with me. I did get to meet her again when I gave one of my first ever professional public readings when she was 98 years old. And I got to thank her publicly. And what she said was such an example of who she was. She just said, "Oh, I wish we had longer time. I would like to ask you a lot more questions." She was a curious person, and she was very happy that her poetry fanaticism had taken. And then when I was in college, I took fiction writing from Robert Flynn. And he, who is still our beloved friend in San Antonio and still writing every day himself, just gave a reading in San Antonio. And he was the person who told me, "I just heard about the Texas Commission on the Arts is hiring writers to go into schools. Maybe you should go to Austin and have an interview." So I sort of attribute my entire working life to Robert Flynn telling me to do that. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, teachers are so important, and I've met so many great ones over the years who encourage their students' voices. I have actually worried over the years that it's harder for teachers to find that creative flex time in classrooms, and they'll say, "Well, I'm so overwhelmed with the official curriculum, the test-based lessons, that I don't really have that much time to let kids write." But as we all know, you can write great things in 5 minutes. So I think just having little regular times to write is really important in classrooms. And yeah.
One of the things that I teach my students that came from you, and I always attribute this exercise, it's so great, you can walk away with it right now, is to sit down and write down 3 things that happened that you saw, experienced, witnessed, that have happened in the last 24 hours of your life, that if you didn't write them down right then, you would forget them within the next 24 hours.
So very minor things,
Yes.
like a little encounter, or a flower, or a cat, or the way the sunrise looked, or just tiniest things.
That makes me think of the writing advice that the poet William Stafford gave, which was, if you want to be a writer, lower your standards. And I know that William Stafford, the poet, came to me through you, and he was a close friend. And was William Stafford a mentor to you?
Well, through his poems first, just through reading him. I found his poems in our high school textbook the first year my parents moved to Texas, and then started going to libraries and seeking out full collections of his books, having no idea that Michael and I would meet him 10 years later and become friends with him till the end of his life, but we did. And in fact, his son, Kim Stafford, himself a really great writer and activist, proponent of peace and dialogue, will be coming to the Round Top Poetry Festival here in Texas in next April. So if anyone wants to hear one of the family members who is really carrying on the tradition, please come to Round Top. But I want to say too how these things happen, these tiny things that you don't know are going to happen. These magical things are happening around us all the time. And I think that's one of the gifts that being a child writer, I started realizing that, well, this life is never boring. There's always something going on outside that window or outside this room that I haven't noticed yet. And I just need to turn my head, or William Stafford used to say, lean a different direction just take a look. What's happening around you? And I met Carrie on the same day she met her husband in a Michener Center class. And so we consider that like a historic day for all of us. And I had first met her husband when he was a fourth grade writer in San Antonio, in his classroom. And it was the first time in my life, and I'd already been working in schools like 15 years, maybe 20 years, I don't remember. I'd already had some experience. It was the first time in my life a poem by a child made me burst into tears. And I had to, it was her husband's poem, and I had to step outside the classroom for a moment just to kind of pull myself together, because I didn't want him to feel like that was a bad thing if someone read his poem and started crying. But it was such a beautiful poem about his father, and it just hit me in a certain way. And
I remember that first day in class, and you said, "Oh, Kirkland, you were my student when you were in the fourth grade," and the rest of us, the other assembled Michener Fellows, were looking at each other like, "What are you talking about?"
No, they were looking at each other like, how old is this person?
But you said that day, this was 23 years ago, you said, "I still have your poem."
I did. I had the original.
And I thought, oh, that's BS. She doesn't still have that poem from. And then a few years ago, you came up from San Antonio, along with Naomi's always bringing things to us, to our family. She brought me this bookmark. She's always bringing things. And she said, "Oh, I brought this." And it was the poem, written in my husband's fourth grade handwriting. And I tell you what, I read it, I cried, and I told Kirk, I said, "Naomi brought the poem that you wrote about your father." And it's so tender to him that he still has not been able to look at it.
It is very tender. And, the fact that that you can go on, in life and keep encountering people, because talk about Kirk's job. Yeah.
Kirk is at the University of Texas, and he is the head of the MFA playwriting program.
He's the head of the department.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. You're as proud of Kirk as I am.
I am very proud of Kirk. Yeah. Well, I know there are many teachers in the room, and you just have a certain pride about the people you've met and worked with, and you see how they shine at your early age, and it's incredible.
So I'm going to ask you one more question.
Okay.
And then I think you promised us one more poem.
Okay.
And then we'll open it up for some
If anyone has
questions.
questions.
So can I just ask this one question?
Yeah.
I feel like poets often, and I think you especially, people go to your work for comfort, for finding meaning in this sometimes unbearable world, and hope. And I wonder if you could talk a little bit about where you are going to find hope right now, and who are the voices you are seeking out, and
Right. Thank you. Well, I will always go to writers. I will always go to other people's writing for hope, and quiet places and nature, the natural world, and children and teenagers to want to be around these voices that feel somehow more hopeful than we might be at a certain adult age. And I think it will always be there, like a balance beam. I think when I started writing as a child myself, I felt that everything calmed down when I wrote. Somehow, some of the extraneous babble fell away. If there was argument in the vicinity or trouble in the vicinity, I love that William Goyen, Texas writer, quote, "I always start with trouble." To start with something that's causing trouble around you, that pull some thread from there as a place for you to begin whatever you're going to write. I always felt better after I wrote, even as a child. And I think many of us may want to adopt this practice of just sitting down and writing some, people talk about making gratitude lists, but I think of it as like cheers to you, cheers to this good thing that still exists. You can't take this away from us. You can't tell me this doesn't matter. Whatever that is to any of you on a given day. The day after the election, I was feeling so in shock. I was driving down a street in San Antonio, and I was actually speaking this out loud to things I saw out the window, like cheers to something that could give me hope outside the window, something that was positive. The posture of this child crossing the street with his backpack, or just cheers to this woman walking her dog with a completely in shock look on her face, but the dog looks fine. Just writing, speaking out loud the things that I could hold on to give me a sense of normalcy and reality, because I was in a state of complete disbelief. And I think we have to do that for ourselves when we have personal grief and trauma regularly through life, but we also have to do it when we have collective challenge. And also we have to keep encouraging one another. I look back at the great American poet Galway Kinnell, and he used to say, a workshop, like a writing workshop, is useful in as much as it encourages people. But it's not there to take them down or to tell them they should be something else or they should be something better. It's there for encouragement and sustenance, or for someone to see something in your work that you didn't even know was there, for insight. I feel that happening at Texas State now all the time with my beautiful international students there. Somebody will see something in someone else's poem, and there'll be this look of surprise and joy, like, wow, I didn't realize this poem was carrying that also. And I think that we just have to draw harder on the well springs of inspiration for each one of us and share those person to person every single day. I think that's what we're going to have to do. And not be afraid to speak out. So to me, the best thing about any kind of award is that it might give you a podium to speak from here and there. And, I just talked about Gaza at the Guggenheim Museum, and my Jewish friends and my Arab friends all agreeing on what would be a better path to take than what's been going on. And, if you have platforms, I take that with humility, but also opportunity, that we just have to keep speaking out and giving each other courage.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Thank you, Carrie.
One of the things that is not even in your bio yet, that everyone should know, is that Naomi was just awarded the Wallace Stevens Lifetime Achievement Award recently, in the last month, from the Academy of American Poets. And, right?
Thank you. Yes, thank you. Thank you so much. And Wallace Stevens is a poet who has intrigued me since I was a teenager, but I am now returning to his work. He's always been a little mysterious to me and mysterious to many people. I love, there's a video of him, of people who knew him, made way back, like in the 60s, of people who were still living who had known him and worked with him. And they're saying, we had no idea he was a poet. Yes. I sat next to this guy for years in an office. I didn't know he was a poet, a great American poet. That's news to me. But if you watch this video, it's very funny. The fact that he remained like so secretive in his own life about his work. And it also rather charmed me to win that particular award, because Wallace Stevens is always described as being a poet who never wrote about his personal life, and I have always written about my personal life. So I'm not sure how he would feel about me carrying this award, but I'm returning to his work with renewed interest and finding, I think you can understand him better at a later age than when you're 17. So if you were an early Wallace Stevens reader and haven't looked at him for a while, maybe go back to him. Thank you, Carrie. So do we have any?
Well, yes. Well, do you want to read one more poem, and then we'll have some questions. So get those questions ready.
Yes. So this is an actual suggestion I made in a class once, and it turned out it was so wonderful what the kids wrote that I went home and ended up writing a poem just about that experience. So I'm speaking as if I'm one of the kids, but really I was the one who gave the assignment. And also I'm calling myself an English teacher, which I wasn't really, but okay. Sifter. When our English teacher gave our first writing invitation of the year, become a kitchen implement in 2 descriptive paragraphs, I did not think butcher knife or frying pan. I thought immediately of soft flour showering through the little holes of the sifter and the sifter's pleasing circular swishing sound, and wrote it down. Rhoda became a teaspoon, Roberto a funnel, Jim a muffin tin, and Forrest a soup pot. We read our paragraphs out loud. Abby was a blender. Everyone laughed and acted giddy, but the more we thought about it, we were all everything in the whole kitchen. Drawers and drainers, singing teapot and grapefruit spoon with serrated edges. We were all the empty cup, the tray. This, said our teacher, is the beauty of metaphor. It opens doors. What I could not know then was how being a sifter would help me all year long, or maybe even for 4 years. When bad days came, I would close my eyes and feel them passing through the tiny holes. When good days came, I would try to contain them gently, the way flour remains in the sifter until you turn the handle. Time, I was a sweet sifter in time, and no one ever knew. So thank you. Thank you. So good. That's what we'll have to be. We'll have to be sifters, yes, and sift through to find the goodness that keeps happening on all fronts, no matter what else is happening.